So it ended up being useful, although I'm definitely not in the psychology field. And then after that, so I got my BA from Washington University in St. Louis, did Peace Corps, and when I did Peace Corps, I did Peace Corps in Jamaica, and it's all about communities and how communities can change their own situations. I really fell in love with that idea and wanted to go into city government. So I got a master's in public policy from the Harvard Kennedy School, studied social and urban policy, and got a job with DC government. And that's where we start here. So what we're going to talk about today is the story about how this came out. We'll get into a few small technical pieces about it, but it's mostly why this happened, what pitch did we use to make it happen, how did we end up building it from scratch to what you see now in a year, or in a season, I should say. Then some of the challenges that we faced, and some of the other benefits outside of just snow, including inauguration, but also the strength of our data infrastructure now that we have all of this information. All right, so get into the why. So in DC, this is how the hierarchy is set up. You have the mayor on top, of course. Then you have the Office of the City Administrator, who steps in and finds out information from all of the different agencies so that he can be confident that we're on the right path and that we are taking care of our city properly. Next, you have District Department of Transportation. They plow 5 of the 14 snow zones. And then you have the Department of Public Works, who plows the other 9 snow zones. So 2 agencies, both are plowing snow, and we only contract out when it's a huge snowstorm. Then you have Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency, who also tracks all of the stuff that we're doing in order to make sure the city's ready for whatever comes next. So during that big snowstorm, I was working for the Office of the City Administrator. And like I said, I didn't really know much about snow. So I was sitting in Snow Command asking people information about their jobs, seemed like every 30 seconds, so that we could then report it back to the city administrator. You know, some of these people have been doing this for 10 or 15, 20 years, and they're like, who is this punk that's just asking me for information all the time? Like, I'm sorry, I know. And then, so that's why when we were looking at this, thinking there has to be a better way because people know this information. They've been doing it for a long time. It's just not able to be communicated out right now. So next year, so this is how we were communicating it at this time. You got some charts that different people pull from different systems. This is our check-in, check-out system. Vehicles in the same thing. We have these routes. The coverage is written by hand, 96.97%. Man, that's really great accuracy for coming up with something by hand. And I asked them where they got that, and you know, it was the papers that people were turning in and how many stops they thought people covered. So I was very impressed by that accuracy. And this was really time-consuming. You had about 100 different people entering information to get to something that's not very actionable. It doesn't have many details. It says, we have 220 people checked in for DDOT right now. Okay, what are they doing? How long have they been checked in? When did they get off shift? None of this information was communicated. This is still in the same year. This was the Office of the City Administrator Summary Report. I was really proud of myself for making this before the storm started. All the agencies prepped and ready to go and give me the information 24 hours after the storm started. Yeah, that didn't happen. It was about 7 days later. It was completely static, just a few things. It's telling you the baseline, what happened during the storm. It's telling you requests that MOKers receive. Those are our community response employees. It's telling you absenteeism for schools and other pre-treated roads. So it has some decent information. We know what we want, but it's really, we can't take any action during a storm and adjust to how we can make things better during a storm. So I go and I work for the Department of Public Works. Like, no way. There's no way that I'm going to be the person on the other side of that phone call trying to answer all of these questions. So here's my pitch. Snow Dash, more time plowing, less time reporting. Basically, you guys need to do the work. You're great doing the work. We don't need to bother you. Let's come up with a better way to report out the information, be able to tell the story of what you're doing. So we had a few things working in our favor. First of all, when we said this to people, every agency was on board. City Administrator's Office wanted better information. Both Public Works and Transportation didn't want to be bothered. Homeland Security, the same thing. And the Office of the Chief Technology Officer, who was trying to build stuff on the fly at like 3 a.m. on the third day of snow cleanup. It lasted 7 days, by the way. I think I worked like 130.7 hours out of the possible 168. Not that I was counting every single second. So the next thing was favorable factors in terms of data. So just shortly before we started to do Snow Dash, we had a consultant come in that was doing some executive dashboarding for us. Now, this helped us because it got people thinking about automating data feeds. And so even though the executive dashboards didn't take off the way we wanted them to, they connected us to the important information. They got people thinking about real-time automated data. And they already had some vizzes that were good for, say, 311 service requests that we could simply take from those dashboards, just put them onto our dashboard. There was already a considerable amount of QA/QC. And then, because I'd worked at the Office of the City Administrator, and because we'd had all those conversations about what data we weren't getting, we knew kind of where we wanted to go. We knew what information we wanted to be on there. Finally, it was basically free for us at that point. We had 5 Tableau licenses. All we really needed was 1, apparently. And we had analysis. We had some QA/QC on the data, and we had people who were able to understand that information. So I said that our pitch was more time plowing, less time reporting. I had bigger goals than that. I just didn't want to share them yet. So yes, definitely save field staff time and headache. Let's make this accurate and actionable. What information is on there so we can use it to make decisions, to change what we're doing in the moment? Finally, tiered viewed for multiple audiences. This was supposed to be just one view for our exec. It's like, all right, great, we can print this out and send it to the Office of the City Administrator. Because that's how you start with Tableau, right? You're still printing PDFs. But I thought maybe we could bring it down to another level, which I'll show in a few minutes, so that managers could learn from it. And then maybe we can even answer questions at the bottom detail at the time when we have this 5 a.m. meeting with the mayor and the city administrator to find out whether we're going to open schools. Finally, we had multiple agencies that were sharing data sources. So we could use that and leverage that to reduce, or actually to improve our relationships. And we were saying, hey, transportation, we'll do this for you. And you can benefit from it as well. And finally, the immediacy of snow. Like, snow makes or breaks a mayor. I've heard stories of, the mayor coming in her last year, he or she in her last year, huge snow breaks out, and that's all that anybody can remember is that they failed at snow during their election, or during election year. So we could use this to build up our data resources. All right, so this is my favorite quote about dashboards, if you haven't seen it. A dashboard is a visual display of the most important information needed to achieve one or more objectives that has been consolidated on a single computer screen so it can be monitored at a glance. So this is exactly what we wanted to do. We wanted the information about what's going on during snow so that we could improve snow operations and easily accessible at a glance. So the final favorable factor was that we didn't need to pitch a final project. When you have a consultant come in and do a project for you, in your procurement, you already have to have all the details written out of what you want. When you need to change it, you have to, write some new adjustment and give them more money to change it. So like, they're not going to be doing that at 2 a.m. during the middle of a snowstorm. When people asked us questions, we wanted to be able to adjust it and build as we went. All right, so how did we do this? So again, this is our final product. Well, by final, I mean at the end of year 1. We are still improving it now. This was our starting point. We had information in systems. People are checking into StormTrack when they walk in the door. Then we also have Faster, which looks at our vehicle maintenance. Again, StormTrack tracks vehicles. Also now AVL to track vehicles and their actual location in real time. We had Salesforce for 311. And then we had GTech Now Officer Command Center, which nobody's ever heard of, because I think we're the only ones that use it. But we had all of these softwares that had a lot of good data in them. So we just started going one by one, seeing where we could get some headway. First, we were looking at our snow assets. This was easy to pull down from StormTrack. We could summarize it quickly, and this was easy to pull down. Unfortunately, this one is not yet automated. We have to do an Excel download. And you'll notice the numbers are different, 229 versus 212. We used 2 systems together to show which one was accurate and which wasn't. Before, people just assume everything that has a geolocator on it is sending out signals, but it's not. And we also assume that people are actually checking out their vehicles, but clearly they're not. The next thing, I said parking. We have parking on here. So 2 years ago, during this big snowstorm, we get out a ton of parking tickets, thousands and thousands of citation money. And that wasn't very popular. And eventually we end up null and voiding the tickets. But we thought, hey, we want to avoid this in the future. So let's just put parking tickets and see how it adds up over time, just to make sure. Then we added route completion. Now, route completion is one of my favorite things. Again, it's not automated at this point. It is an Excel download from our AVL system. It's fine. It takes about 10 seconds to do this. But I had this conversation with a guy who was like, he was Route 54, which you can see right here. And it's saying, that is the least plowed heavy route at DDOT. And he's like, no way. You're totally wrong about this. And I was like, great. I love it when people tell me I'm wrong. Because it means they're engaged. It means they care about the information. It means they're looking at the information. I said, all right, what do you know that I don't know? Why is this wrong? And he's like, well, I did my whole route. Then we used our AVL web technology to look at the breadcrumbs of where his route was. Turns out he didn't really know his route. He wasn't driving the right route. So we started using this out in the fields with managers who were looking at their overall routes and saying, this one is least, this one is least. Do my drivers actually know where they're supposed to be plowing? So we could make that change on the go. Next, we have our 311 service requests. And so we were looking at where service requests were being bundled so that we could deploy specific plows out to go to those dense locations, assuming there was an issue there. I mean, you'd verify it with cameras and all of that before we going out there, but how can we change where we're deploying to get the most affected areas? Next, we have some salt usage data. Over on the left, we have salt as it's being taken out of the salt dome. They have to type that into StormTrack. And we could watch it. If you'll notice, there's an orange line before any of the other ones. Right here. That orange line starts first. Well, that is our dome at South Capitol Street. And somebody went rogue and started taking out salt before we had made the decision to salt. That made us change the way we were communicating the shift starts and saying, okay, no, we need to be very explicit about when you should start salting, because it's a science about the roads, the temperature of the roads, how long before the storm. So you don't want it to, you don't want to lose the salt before you even get any snow. And then another thing happened one time, which is one of the salt domes their levels just never changed at all. And we realized we had never opened that salt dome. And so we could see that in real time that salt dome was not giving out salt. And then we also use this overall on the right. Imagine each of these is the actual height of a salt dome, and green is what we have left in each dome. And we could calculate this based on what we'd used previously, what we'd used that storm, and how much we had left. And this was a really good tool for the city administrator to just let him know, we're fine. If we have another storm, we have enough salt left. Finally, we have a status of our vehicles. So here I used level of detail, which I love, very powerful tool in Tableau. And we were looking at all of the work orders of our vehicles to see if any of those work orders were open, and therefore our vehicles were down. Because if they have an open work order, it means there's work being done on it, and their status is they can't plow. So we actually use this. This is also one of my favorite ones because people saw this and they were like, whoa, we can do this for like vehicles anytime? Yeah, not just plows. We can have a better picture of our vehicle health overall. Finally, we have personnel, which I'm going to try to go seamlessly to our Tableau workbook real quick. Okay, so here's our dashboard for personnel. So I said all of those things had more links on them. And so this is once you press that for more employees, this is the link. Let's see, this is not the link. So each of those, more employee, more event, more vehicle, brings you to a new dashboard that hypothetically the manager of that specific area is going to be looking at in depth and using in depth. Yeah. No. So while he's bringing this up, for employees, there's a new person who is in charge of check-in, check-out. And he immediately realized our check-in, check-out process was severely broken. A lot of people were working without actually getting checked in. People were claiming overtime that may or may not have been realistic. And there was just no controls around this, so it was like luck of the draw whether people were checking in, checking out, whether the data was accurate. Sorry, it didn't resize well for this screen, but that's okay. So we have, hey, excuse me. So basically, each of these is a drill down. You can see under location selection, you can choose to just see one location in which vehicles are checked in at that location. Same for the shift. You can just look at who's checked in on whichever shift. You can search for a specific employee by name, and you can change the view entirely. Right now you see the agency roles, but instead you could see by location. And all of this, the entire screen changes so that it's looking at location. And the way we did that was, this is a parameter right here, where you can toggle which field you're looking at. That was a very, very cool thing to incorporate. No. All right, well, we'll skip the interactive portion of this, but basically, one big thing that came out of this too was we have all these job roles. We have this like field master right here. Like, what is a field master? Are they like magically melting snow or something like that? So we just click this button here, where it says 1 for that field master, and it brings us to the view of, oh, it's John Smith that is the field master. Now, I know John Smith, and I know he's not magically melting snow. In fact, when I asked around, people couldn't really tell me what he was doing. And part of that was we just didn't have a good idea on who was checking in and checking out and what we actually needed. So now we're consolidating this list, and we're saying, okay, does this match what we actually need? And do we need to call more drivers to come in now because we don't have enough? Another thing about this is you can see this field here that looks really bad. It's like a bunch of other agencies. I'm like, we only have 5 agencies. Why do we have some other group of random people signing in? And I didn't want to take that off of our dashboard because I want people to see that. And again, when you don't like what you see, you want to change it. People didn't want to be represented by that. So it was good for people to see what was actually happening. And yeah, also we have you can't see it on here, but we have a shift 12 on there, and we were like, what's shift 12? Come on, people, better data entry. So we're using this not only to get information and to provide information, but also to improve the quality of the information. All right, let's see if I can't do this. All right, there we go. All right, so what are some of our challenges? First of all, we didn't really know who the audience was going to be at first. We knew we had to send reports to the city administrator. That's done. It gets automatically sent via subscription every 4 hours, so they don't really bother us anymore. We can see in advance when there are issues, and we just tell our director, hey, city administrator is going to call you about this unless you fix it. And lo and behold, that happened one day, and he was so thankful that he already had an answer about what we were doing to fix it before he was asked that question. Then it was always evolving. You know, when I talked about that employee dashboard, the reason why that one looks pretty nice is because the person who was managing check-in, check-out really saw the value of this tool. He was like, oh, this is great. And I was like, great. I'm spending the rest of these 24 hours with you until we get it to exactly how you want it. And then we started finding different users of each of these different pieces and just focusing on those power users that were going to help us push this forward. Finally, it's different for different events. We use this for inauguration. One big change was we used a shapefile to outline the mall and the area most affected by inauguration so that we could monitor those parking tickets. What we really need to monitor was people getting towed. And one thing that came out of that was there was a private company that was doing towing, whereas we were supposed to be doing all of the towing for inauguration. And so we quickly were able to make the change and say, nope, contractors aren't supposed to tow. You guys are off for the day. And then real-time changes in requests. I mean, this was awesome. As we were going throughout the storm, people were asking for changes. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to sleep. I wanted to make it as quality as possible for people that were actually going to use it. We did have data quality problems, which we showed. This helps improve data quality. And the year that we were setting it up, we had less time for analysis. Now that it's set up, now we can use it to do more analysis. And finally, Excel versus automation. People were scared. They didn't trust the data. And so it was only through interacting with them that we could convince them. And even now, in the second year, we're just picking off user by user and spending time with each of them individually until they start telling other people about it. All right, and benefits. So benefits for events management. It helped us identify operational improvements. It's shareable via Tableau Server, so you have subscriptions, you have many different people checking it many different times for exactly what they want out of it. Again, flexibility. It caters to a wide group of people and can change as we go. I said about the data, now we can turn it into analytics. And it also gave us a template for a better events management software. I've mentioned StormTrack a couple times, and that's where we do check-in, check-out, and assignment of vehicles. We want a new events management system, and we could say, all right, this Tableau dashboard, this is what we want out of it. These are all the different connections we want to make, so let's structure our RFP for that software based on what we've learned from this information. And then the benefits for data infrastructure. This really helped us QA/QC data and to show users how they were an important part of that QA/QC. Because we'll never know if the data is right unless somebody else that has knowledge on the ground is looking at it. It really was an exposure of possibilities and opportunities for what we can do not only as an agency, but also as a city, and how we can communicate much better between agencies and how each agency can help each other out. Because of course with Tableau, here's the snow dashboard, and people are like, oh, that's really cool. Oh, just take the dashboard. Take whatever you need from it, use it, duplicate it, replicate it, whatever. So it helped our analyst conversation. And finally, data automation. Most of this stuff is automated at this point, but now it shows people that we really need to automate data if you want something of quality. And so we use that in conversations when the director says, hey, can we get information about that? I'm like, yeah, but gonna have to download it in Excel first. You're gonna have to wait a couple hours. You're gonna have to, and it helps him know what's possible. So that's my presentation on Snowdash, but before I move on, I have two quick things that we're working on, because one of the reasons why I love this conference is to connect with people that are working on similar things. So I just want to give a sneak peek of what is next for us to see maybe if other people are working on this. So next, I want to use Tableau for business process mapping. And what this graphic is, on the left are service requests coming in. You have alley repair and roadway repair. On the right is who is actually completing those requests. A lot of you probably have similar experiences when responsibility for completing something gets moved from one group to another group. It often gets completely lost. So this kind of diagram can help us see where are things coming in and where's the responsibility ending. Plus, I wanted you guys to see that I can actually make cool vizzes too and not just charts of numbers. And finally, Waze data. I'm so curious if anybody is using Waze data. We want to use this to look at, for example, stop sign, putting in a new stop sign. What was the change in those traffic patterns before and after that stop sign went in? And did we have the intended effect with that stop sign? All right, well, I hope you guys got a little bit out of that presentation, seen some possibilities for real-time automation and events management. So I'll open it up to questions. Yes. No. Oh. Yeah. So we didn't abandon it, but also that was with the Department of Public Works. We kind of took that and learned from the experience of building a dashboard for an executive and figuring out that they might not always know what they want to see. And modifying it from there. So he's definitely the director of Public Works, which I worked at, City Administrator, Public Works, Transportation. The director of Public Works still uses that. It's just in a modified form. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I worked in the mayor's office first, then at the Department of Public Works, where we did some executive dashboarding. And then we were able to leverage that knowledge and the data feeds to go into the Snow dashboard. Yes, actually, so Washington, D.C. has Tableau Server, and they're testing out right now Tableau Public. And DDOT is the first customer. We're raring to go, and really looking forward to the kind of feedback that we can get from that. That would be excellent. We haven't gotten there yet. We do share, I mean, we are right down the road from USDOT. We do share information with them, and there are a lot of federal requirements. Even though we're not technically a state, we do have state responsibilities. So we do plan partnering with them to see how we can provide better metrics for what they require. Yeah, it kind of happened all at once, but we started building in September of last year, I guess. By the time we had the first snow in January, we had kind of a prototype up and running, and then we really just focused on user engagement at that point, and kind of let the user drive where it went. And it was just, first me and the guy doing check-in, check-out, just like back and forth, back and forth. Then somebody else heard about it and just talked to that one person back and forth. And then route completion was really where it took off because people, even drivers, could see how it could help their daily life. And then, we just had the first round of kickoff meetings for snow this year. And it's just like, oh yeah, that's how we've always done it, of course, which is great because it means that it's a part of our, institutional process now. And more people, since we've done that, more and more people have started asking me, how can we, I have an idea for this, I have an idea for that, and it's great because it's really growing now in the second year.